Dr. Phil stood center stage, holding a white envelope. His usual commanding presence had shifted into something else, something quieter, heavier. The studio lights felt hotter. The audience, usually buzzing with anticipation, sat in absolute silence. On his left, a woman named Sarah gripped the armrest of her chair so tightly her knuckles had gone white. On his right, a man named Marcus sat frozen, barely breathing. Then Dr. Phil did something he almost never does. Stop the cameras. The production crew exchanged confused glances. Cameramen lowered their equipment slightly. The teleprompter operator looked toward the control booth. Dr. Phil turned to face the audience directly, then back to Sarah and Marcus. "What you're about to hear," he said, his voice steady but softer than usual, "is going to change both of your lives. Forever." But to understand how two complete strangers ended up on that stage, holding their breath over a DNA test neither of them saw coming, we have to go back 3 weeks. Sarah Mitchell, 38, had lived her entire life in a small town in Ohio. She was a schoolteacher, a single mother of 2, and by all accounts, ordinary. Except for one thing, she had no idea who her biological father was. Her mother had passed away 6 years earlier, taking that secret to the grave. All Sarah had was a faded photograph of her mother standing next to a man she didn't recognize, taken at a summer fair in 1985. For years Sarah had tried to move on. But the questions gnawed at her. Who was he? Did he know about her? Did she have siblings? Medical history? A whole other half of her identity was missing, and every time her daughters asked about their grandfather, Sarah felt the weight of that absence all over again. One night, after scrolling through social media, she saw an ad for the Dr. Phil show. "Do you have a family mystery you need solved?" Without thinking too much about it, she filled out the application. 2 weeks later, a producer called. "We think we can help you," the producer said. "But you need to be ready for anything." Sarah agreed. She had nothing to lose. Marcus Bennett, 42, lived in Texas. He was a construction manager, divorced, father of 1. His life had been stable, predictable, until he received a call from a Dr. Phil producer asking if he'd be willing to take a DNA test for a segment about unknown family connections. At first, Marcus thought it was a scam. But the producer explained, a woman named Sarah had submitted her story, and through a database search and some investigative work, they'd identified Marcus as a potential match. Not as her father, but possibly as her half-brother. Marcus was stunned. His father had passed away 8 years ago. The man had been a truck driver, gone for long stretches throughout the 1980s. Marcus knew his dad wasn't perfect, but he never imagined there might be another child out there. Another sibling he'd never met. The producer told him they'd arrange for DNA testing through a certified lab. Results would be sealed and revealed on the show. Marcus hesitated. This could upend everything. But he also thought about what it would mean if it were true, if Sarah really was his sister. He said yes. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The day of the taping arrived. Sarah flew in from Ohio. Marcus drove in from Texas. Neither had seen a photo of the other. Neither knew for certain what the results would say. The show's team had kept them separated backstage, explaining only that they'd meet on stage in front of Dr. Phil and a live audience. Sarah sat in the green room, hands shaking. A makeup artist tried to calm her down, but nothing helped. This wasn't about being on TV. This was about the possibility, the hope, that she might finally have answers. That she might not be alone anymore. Marcus paced in another room, going over everything in his head. His father's long absences. The towns he used to pass through. Ohio wasn't far from one of his routes. It was possible. It was terrifyingly possible. When the cameras started rolling, Dr. Phil walked out to applause. He greeted the audience, made a few light comments to ease the tension, and then his tone shifted. "Today," he said, "we have 2 people who've never met. They don't know each other's names. They've lived separate lives in different states. But 3 weeks ago, a DNA test was conducted. And what that test revealed is something neither of them expected. He gestured toward the wings. Please welcome Sarah. Sarah walked out slowly, her eyes scanning the stage, the lights, the massive audience. She sat down in the chair Dr. Phil indicated, her hands folded tightly in her lap. And now, Dr. Phil continued, please welcome Marcus. Marcus emerged from the opposite side. When he saw Sarah for the first time, something flickered across his face, recognition, maybe, or just the weight of the moment. He sat down, and for a few seconds neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, two strangers connected by a mystery either had asked for. Dr. Phil let the silence sit. He was good at that, knowing when not to fill the space. Then he began. Sarah, you've spent most of your life not knowing who your father was. You told our producers that it's haunted you. That you felt incomplete. Sarah nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. And Marcus? Dr. Phil turned to him. You were contacted by our team and told there's a possibility, a real possibility, that you and Sarah share the same father. Marcus exhaled slowly. Yeah. I didn't know what to think. I still don't. Dr. Phil held up the envelope. Inside this envelope are the results of a DNA test conducted by a certified laboratory. It will tell us, definitively, whether or not you two are half-siblings. The audience leaned forward. Sarah's breathing quickened. Marcus stared at the envelope like it might explode. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. He looked at Sarah, then at Marcus. His expression softened in a way the audience rarely saw. Before I open this, he said, I need you both to understand something. Whatever this says, your lives are about to change. If it's positive, you've just gained family. If it's negative, you'll have closure, but you'll also have to keep searching. Either way, this moment matters. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I just want to know, she said, her voice breaking. I just need to know. Marcus reached across the space between them, not quite touching her, but close. Whatever it says, he told her. You're not alone in this. Dr. Phil nodded. He looked toward the control booth, then back at the audience. Stop the tape. The crew froze. This wasn't scripted. Dr. Phil rarely interrupted production, and when he did, it meant something significant was about to happen. He turned to Sarah and Marcus, speaking directly to them now, not to the cameras. I want you both to take a breath, he said. This isn't about television. This is about your lives. If you need a moment before I open this, we can take it. Sarah shook her head. No. I'm ready. Marcus nodded. Me too. Dr. Phil tore open the envelope. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and read it silently. His jaw tightened slightly. He folded the paper once, then looked up. Sarah. Marcus. He paused. According to this DNA analysis, you share 25% of your genetic markers. The words hung in the air. You are half-siblings. Sarah gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Marcus sat back in his chair stunned. For a moment neither of them moved. Then Sarah stood up, tears streaming down her face, and Marcus stood too. They stepped toward each other, awkwardly at first, then with more certainty, and embraced. The audience erupted. Some were crying. Others were clapping. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them space, his own eyes glistening. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He gestured to his team and walked toward the wings. A producer approached him, confused. What are you doing? Give them time, Dr. Phil said. This isn't a segment. This is their life. For the next several minutes the cameras kept rolling, but Dr. Phil stayed off to the side. Sarah and Marcus sat back down, still holding hands, asking each other questions. What was your childhood like? Do you have kids? What was Dad like when you knew him? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a photo of their father. She stared at it, tracing the outline of his face with her finger. That's him. she whispered. That's the man in my mother's picture. When Dr. Phil finally returned to the stage, he didn't sit down. He stood between them, one hand on each of their shoulders. I've been doing this for a long time, he said. And I've seen a lot of reunions. But this... His voice caught slightly. This is what it's all about. Two people who were lost, now found. He looked directly into the camera. Family isn't just about biology. But when biology and love come together, when two people find each other after a lifetime apart, that's something sacred. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The show arranged for follow-up care. Sarah and Marcus were connected with a family therapist who specialized in late discovery situations. They exchanged contact information. Marcus invited Sarah to meet his daughter. Sarah invited Marcus to meet her two girls. But before they left the studio that day, something else happened. Dr. Phil called them back to the stage after the cameras had officially stopped rolling. The audience had been dismissed, but the crew was still breaking down equipment. I want you both to have something, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out two small items, identical silver bracelets, each engraved with a single word, found. Sarah took hers, tears welling up again. Marcus held his, turning it over in his hands. I don't usually do this, Dr. Phil said. But I wanted you to have a reminder. Not of this show. Not of the test. But of each other. You were lost, and now you're found. That's not something to take lightly. Sarah hugged him. Marcus shook his hand, then pulled him into an embrace. It was one of those rare moments when the man behind the show, the psychologist, the father, the person, was fully present. No cameras, no audience, just three people acknowledging something profound. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. A week after the episode aired, Sarah received a message on social media. It was from a woman named Linda, who lived in California. Linda had watched the episode and noticed something in the background of the old photograph Sarah had shown on air, the one of her mother and their father at the fair. Linda explained that she, too, had been searching for her biological father. And the man in Sarah's photograph looked exactly like a man in a photo her own mother had kept hidden for decades. Sarah forwarded the message to Marcus. They both stared at their screens in disbelief. Could there be a third sibling? They contacted the Dr. Phil's show again. The producers were skeptical at first, but after reviewing Linda's information and conducting preliminary research, they agreed to arrange another DNA test. 2 months later, Linda flew to Texas to meet Sarah and Marcus in person, off camera this time, at Marcus's home. They sat around his kitchen table, the same envelope from the lab sitting in the center, unopened. Should we wait for Dr. Phil? Linda joked nervously. Sarah laughed through her tears. No. This one's ours. Marcus opened the envelope. He read the results aloud, his voice shaking. 99.7% probability of half-sibling relationship. The three of them sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then they reached across the table and held hands, three strangers who were strangers no more. They called Dr. Phil personally to tell him. He listened quietly as they recounted the whole story, and when they finished, he said something they'd never forget. This is why I do what I do. Not for the ratings. Not for the applause. But for moments like this. You three found each other because you had the courage to ask the hard questions. Don't ever lose that. 3 months later, they sent Dr. Phil a photo. It showed the three of them standing together at a family barbecue, surrounded by their kids. On the back, Sarah had written, "You gave me my brother. Then we found our sister. Thank you for not giving up on us." Dr. Phil kept that photo in his office. Not for the cameras. Not for the show. But because it reminded him why he did this work in the first place. The envelope had held more than test results. It had held hope. Connection. Proof that even when life keeps secrets, the truth has a way of bringing people together. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to say, "Stop the cameras. This matters." The silver bracelets still sit on their wrists today. Sarah's in Ohio, Marcus's in Texas, and now Linda's in California. 3 pieces of the same story. 3 lives forever changed by a single moment of truth. Because family isn't just found in DNA tests. It's found in the courage to search, the willingness to hope, and the strength to say yes when the universe finally brings you home.